It does look like it, doesn't
Wait,
it?
From Coney Island.
Oh, we got
sure.
caramel apples from Coney Island. We're gonna have a good show today. I'm trying to get my screen right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to. I'm saying welcome back because they brought me back again because they're crazy. I don't know why. To another Transparency Coalition's convention conversation. Napoleon Douglas here. I was here yesterday with part 1 on harassment, and now we're harassment-related concerns, excuse me. And now we are going to head into part 2 and talking about some new resolutions with some similar and familiar, excuse me, and some new delegates I haven't got to talk to yet. First, let's get with some housekeeping. So I would like all of you, this esteemed panel, to introduce your name, your preferred pronouns if you'd like, where you're from, and what your position is in equity governance, and answer this question. Why should actors and stage managers join AEA? If you're walking on the street and you see somebody doing their regional production of Hairspray and they're like, oh my God, you're a delegate and you're in the union, why should I join the union? Let's start with Katrina.
You always make me go fast on the spot. All
right.
Okay, so my name is Katrina Michaels. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm originally from London, England, but now based in New York City. And I am one of your Eastern Principal delegates. I don't know if you heard, that was a nice honk from New York giving some love. So as for why join, I mean, I think firstly, it's such a personal decision, and I don't think anyone should ever sell. I'm not in the business of selling someone on joining. When it's right for you. But I think some strong reasons to join is I think there is power and protection in numbers. There is safety in numbers. There are the support of regulations in numbers, and that is stuff that a union does bring. And so that is my little reason why, I guess.
Yes. All right, I'll jump across the screen. Sarah Quinn.
Hey, I am Sarah Quinn Taylor. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am an Eastern Chorus delegate coming to you live currently from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I would say that I've actually been thinking about this a lot in terms of what a union is and what it's for. And I keep coming back to this idea that we hear over and over again of solidarity and what that means, like truly means. And I think that until every single actor and stage manager is in Actors Equity Association, until that day when we can all like band together and say, no, we deserve these protections and this salary and, you know, like hold the line. Like, I think that is like the utopian goal, but yeah, it's a personal decision, but I love being a part of a union, and I hope that, you know, the PRO Act, hopefully this new government, you know, I think everyone should be in a union.
Yes, I love it. How about Miss Maria Cristina Posada Sly?
Hey, so Maria Cristina, she, her, hers. I am an Eastern Chorus delegate. I'm in New York City. I'm actually in Astoria, Queens. And why should we be a part of the union? I agree with Sarah. I think everyone should be a part of the union. I'm not saying our union is perfect by any means, but we have a hell of a lot more protection when we're in it than when we're not. And with what Katrina said as well, like there's power in numbers. Katrina, you said that, right? Somebody did.
I did indeed. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah. So like, yeah, I just think it's really important to be a part of it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And last but not least, Mr. Ryan.
Hi, Ryan Morales, Eastern Principal Delegate located in Manhattan, New York. And when I think about like why Actors Equity Association is so important, I think, you know, one of our fellow delegates, Jackie Gerald, got us started on this labor book club, reading this awesome book called From the Folks Who Brought You the Weekend, which I think I haven't continued reading it because the history of labor law also makes me really angry because it's inherently very racist and sexist. So it's a very difficult read. But something I've learned from this whole experience is how people in power will destroy systems that empower the people who are not in power, and how people in power will throw their weight around to try to destroy those systems. And if we look at the history of labor law, that's what's been done over and over and over again, is the people on top have destroyed labor unions, have created laws that have undercut labor unions in order to take power out of the hands of people. And so I think that we all should be in a labor union regardless of our profession. I think there should be a higher percentage of our entire population that's a member of a labor union. So we're all actors, you know, do the math from there. But like that's why I'm such a huge proponent of labor unions, because they create better opportunities for everyone in any industry. And Actors Equity Association or SAG or AFTRA or anything else in the theatrical industry, it's the same.
Oh, everybody came ready today. We're gonna have a good conversation. I'm here for it. Thank you so much for joining us. A few more housekeeping things. Thank you. No, hold on. It must have been like me complaining yesterday, but we have a new express stop only shorter version of this code of conduct. It's going to be beautiful and lovely, and I would love to round robin this again. Oh, and maybe if we have time to come back to that, but I looked up where the term round robin came from, because watching this episode, I was like, what a random like thing. Really interesting. Oh, we'll come back to that. But if we head to our code of conduct, Katrina, I've been starting with you, so let's keep that consistent. I like consistency. So you can start us off with the first paragraph, and then Sarah, Quinn, how we go second, Ryan, you go third, and I'll go last. And we'll let Maria Cristina just observe and be our pretty face. Cool.
So she's so much more. So the code of conduct is: the Transparency Coalition is a group of Actors Equity Association delegates dedicated to leadership and communication that is truly representative of our union's members. We're bringing the discussion of convention resolutions and amendments directly to members through a series of live discussions, allowing members to ask questions and express their support or concerns in real time.
We are committed to creating an environment that is rooted in respect so that we can productively create and sustain this inclusive, respectful, brave, safe space to discuss complicated issues. We will always extend that respect to members watching, and we seek the same in return. What we ask is that both the members engaging in conversation with us and the delegates themselves hold these two agreements. 1, speak from the I. 2, confront confusion or discomfort with curious questions.
While we are happy to engage in constructive debate, we view harassment and discrimination as a clear threat to free expression and participants' safety, and as such, they will not be tolerated. We ask that members who engage with us give us the grace to say, I don't know, or to get it wrong sometimes. We bring you this series of convention conversations not only to have meaningful dialogue with current and future members, but to learn more ourselves about the important policies of our union and to enhance our ability to serve as trusted liaisons for our fellow union members.
Work. Shout out to Ruth for still getting all that important information in there and, you know, still making it lovely. Good for you. Especially that last part, like I spoke to yesterday, these are conversations, talking to union members, non-union members, you know, potential future members or whatever. This is about you guys. So please jump in the comment section, interrupt us, you know, throw some questions in there, both in Facebook and YouTube, and we will be glad to throw you into our conversation. All right. I think that, nope, I'm lying. Now, today is a new day for where these resolutions are at. So let me clarify with all of you listening that resolutions that we are discussing here are not in their final version. The deadline for edits were yesterday, April 11th, and final wording should be available soon. So again, just as with a lot of these issues, this is sequential, right? There's a lot of steps to go through it. So there's still a process, and we still got time before April 25th shows up. So just know that take everything with that kindness in your heart, knowing that these beautiful people are working so hard and still have a lot of work to do. Let's get into it. We have some great resolutions to speak about. But before that, I wanted to ask this yesterday. I didn't. Can somebody, and this is for the whole panel, talk about these resolutions. Is a resolution law? How do these documents become actions in AEA governance?
Let me jump in, and other people can edit me. So this convention is a little interesting, and if you go back, if you haven't watched all of the episodes, because we're all busy, in our first episode we talk a lot about this, in fact, and you can go back and hear our conversation about the barriers to resolutions right now, because the majority of what has been written is advisory to council. So pretty much unless a resolution directly affects convention, there's very few things that a resolution can do directly to create. It almost always has to go to council or a committee or to our contract committee or to contract negotiations. There's almost always an extra step. There are amendments we can make that will amend the Constitution, but in terms of actual action, pretty much everything has next steps at council. I think that's kind of the short answer.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add, just to like simplify it even more, because I'm the resident, like, hey, can you explain that to me like I'm a fifth grader? Is like, because I get very intimidated by like the fancy speak of it all, because it's like, whereas blah 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 blah, and whereas blah 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 blah, be it resolved. But it's all these like, and I've had to observe so many council meetings just to like get that dialogue in my ear. It's like a different language almost. But basically these resolutions are just fancily worded like goals that we have, and then Equities outside legal counsel is in the process right now, and I think they're done now, of looking them all over, because like you said, like, is it a law? It's not a law. It's more of like a guiding light, so to speak, but they can't be against the law or like against what equity, stands for in its constitution, etc. So if that kind of makes it just like fancy words about goals.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on just kind of outlining what was the process of these resolutions. So these resolutions were submitted on a portal between March 1st and March 12th. They had to gain a certain number of signatures, 10% if it's a regular resolution, which is 21 delegates, or 20% if it's a constitutional amendment. If you had a motion that was voted in the last regional meeting, it was put on that portal as well to gain signatures. Every motion that then got enough signatures moved to the committee phase. And that's when they kind of discussed, are there any issues with this? We did have the chance to submit resolutions to legal counsel beforehand, but that wasn't, while recommended, it wasn't required. It was just to kind of help clean things up early so it wouldn't be ruled out of order, as Sarah mentioned. So then the committee kind of dove in and looked at any procedural issues. They also looked to consolidate so that we wouldn't have 130 resolutions to attempt in 3 days. So they've been consolidating and reaching out there. And they gave feedback to the motion makers. They had to respond in a certain amount of time. Now that we are past that phase, now the chair of the convention, which is Kate Schindel, and the parliamentarian, who I know his name is Evan. I don't know his last name. It's always Evan. Mysterious. He's like Prince or Madonna. And they will be going through and looking if any of the resolutions are out of order. As Sarah mentioned, that's if it goes against like the laws of the country. Like if someone made a resolution that said, I move that every 16-year-old should get 2 cocktails on opening night. We can't say that. I mean, like, it would be a bash. I can't have that. So they'll go through, they'll rule out those, and then we should be getting all delegates will be getting a virtual booklet with all the resolutions. They will have a financial estimate of how much they should cost to put into action. They also will most likely be categorized, since we have 4 categories which will fall under confidentiality rules if the convention rules are voted on. And so they said they might include that in the booklet too, so we have awareness of where these discussions will fall. And that will take us to April 25th.
Wow. Wow. It's very exciting. I remember growing up, I was a part of the NAACP and I was like a voting delegate for years. And I remember being a little too young to understand the gravity of like being a voting delegate and all of that. And just understanding a lot of the times I felt like I was just like putting on a suit and sitting up here with these adults and like, yeah, I represent like 3 states. I don't know what I'm doing. And it seems like you guys really are given a platform to have some type of power and some type of voice. And so I'm really excited to see how this first wave of that goes on. Actually, hold on to that point because I might come back and circle a question about that at the end. But before we get too long into this, let's talk about the resolutions at hand, shall we? First up, we have so the first one, the first resolution is about BIPOC inclusion on disciplinary hearing committees. It was made by Ms. Kimberly Chatterjee, which we don't have with us today, but of course we have this esteemed panel who is going to fill those shoes remarkably. A little background on this: there was originally 2 resolutions that are now merged. The first resolution was to create an anti-harassment working group, and the second, a BIPOC representation on disciplinary. It was about having more BIPOC representation on disciplinary hearing committees. Wow, I haven't spoke a lot today. This is short, so I'm going to read this and we can discuss a little bit. We won't read the second one; it's pretty long. Resolution language. Be it resolved that we recommended to council that they create a process that mandates the presence of BIPOC members on all regional disciplinary hearing committees, with the strong effort to be made at these committees are populated by at least 50% BIPOC members within 1 year. Be it further resolved that convention makes a special recommendation to council to create an anti-harassment working group to address and further clarify the process of creating disciplinary hearing committees with an eye to standardizing the process amongst each regional board and each regional vice president. Hearing that and with your little reading on that, and I'll take it to Ms. Maria because we haven't heard a lot from you yet. What do you think this resolution is about, and what does it intend to do?
Well, I mean, if there's anything, okay. Like, I love that she specifically puts a number. We need at least 50% BIPOC members within 1 year. Yeah, I mean, if there's anything that I don't love about our union, it's that if you go up to the top of the food chain of like the people in power, it's less and less minorities, it's less and less females, it's less and less BIPOC, like, and that's why it's so difficult to get anything done.
Yeah.
Because everything that we try to do has to pass through them.
Yeah. Stay on that lane. What does, you right into my next question, what does having BIPOC representation do to this committee or anywhere? Does it make it more fair? Is it making it more equitable? How does that benefit all of us?
I would say if we're having, like, let's say on council, we had the majority of Black women. How do you think that would change our union? I mean, like, I would be prouder to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I think we'd see a lot
so down
of change.
for that.
Like, what if it was just all Black women like that? I think we'd be set.
Yeah. Anybody else thinking about, and I'm sure you guys have really seen how whitewash is for being in like the Zoom rooms, I guess now and things, but having the opportunity to see these committees and the council itself all join together. What do you think that shift to having more BIPOC representation will do for the union as a whole? Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, something I've really noticed as from the spaces I've been in, from doing a lot of like signal boosting during the delegate elections with a lot of the other BIPOC candidates, like Maria, Cristina, and I were both involved in that. And there are a lot of really brilliant people who aren't engaged really much anymore in what's going on, because it's really fatiguing it asks a lot of people to come into an organization where there isn't that already and try to come in and create change. And so I think by having a a system that is already that, then you get even more brilliant voices in the room, and not just the people who have the time, the energy, the resilience, etc. Like, you don't have to already have all those traits to be able to survive just actually having your voice heard, because there's so many barriers to getting it heard. I think it's the same thing like when we've got enough women in the room, right? Like if it's a totally male dominated room and there's not enough women in the room, then the women have to work even harder to be able to protect themselves, their energy, to be able to stay, like, keep the brilliant women we need in the room. And same with stage managers, people outside of New York City, all of these groups. When we don't have enough equality, then the brilliant people we do have that do show up get tired and leave.
Wow. Anybody else, please add on. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I'll just add to that. In the short time that I've been a delegate and like in governance and seeing how things work, and I immediately came in and just tried to have conversations with as many people as possible. Like, okay, how does this work? I didn't know anything. I just knew that like it was COVID. I was scared. I was tired of how things were doing, and like, if not me, who? But one thing that I've learned, and this is actually, I feel like it's probably going to come up in our conversation today, and Katie actually mentioned it yesterday in terms of like protecting like our own leaders and governance from harassment.
Give me a segue. Come on.
Something that I've learned that I have such like so much more respect for is the mental energy and like the bravery that it takes to put yourself out there in terms of leadership. And I think that, and like Ryan and Maria said, it's not that people are like, the people that aren't engaging aren't super capable, like just as capable or just as brilliant. It's like maybe they haven't been asked, or maybe they're intimidated by the bureaucracy of the system, or they don't know how to get involved. So I think, and I love the specificity of the number, like Maria said, because it's like, until we start writing these things into policy and setting them in stone and saying, and mandating it, right? So it's not like, oh, well, where are we going to get ByPOC? Go find them, activate them, teach them, invite them into these spaces, because we need all voices in these spaces to make them more equitable. And so if there's anything that I've learned through all of it, it's like, it's a balancing act, but it's like, if people are showing up to the spaces, like, welcome them in. And I think that's what we're trying to do with these conversations too. Like, we're trying to make it less scary, because I don't think I've ever had more imposter syndrome in my life than I've had since I got elected. And then it's just kind of like, oh, everyone's making it up. Everyone's just doing it.
Literally, okay? Nobody has this together, you know. But I think, you know, if you think about the racial inequalities and the social climate at a larger sense that we've kind of been dealing with, I mean, forever, but like it really came to rise last summer, especially. A lot of it's accessibility, right? A lot of it is making, and I had coming, you know, being born, I'm not born, but like being raised in Iowa, and like coming from from an environment where I was very tokenized for a lot of time, you know, where I was that token Black, you know, I was in the gifted and talented, I was that smart kid, you know, there was a lot of privileges afforded to me and a lot of passes that I was given, that at first I felt that I had this like obligation to fight and like help my white brothers and sisters and all that. Like, no, I have all this. And then like you're talking about, like Marie's talking about, and Ryan, there's a bandwidth thing, right? And it's like, how much do we want to ask of all this? But when I was talking to my friends, and they, you know, who may be running companies or organizations or whatever, they're like, I don't know what to do. I was like, that's the problem. You think you need to do something. And a lot of the time it's just creating this space for somebody that looks like me to be in that position. The idea of you thinking that you need to do something is actually the problem, is the fact that you're not willing to step back and kind of say, hey, I'm gonna give 50% of my seats to people who need to be represented on this. I think that can kind of solve it. But I was also, it's funny, I didn't expect myself to bring so much of my personal experience with this, but I was that person who kind of didn't like the term BIPOC when it came out. I thought that there were so many Black issues and so many Black things that there was kind of an erasure in trying to bring us all together. And I've been enlightened to see, especially institutionally, how that works. My question now is, in specifying BIPOC, are we erasing our brothers and sisters in like the disability communities or in these other communities that are also marginalized? Or do we think that BIPOC extends bigger than race?
Oh, that's interesting. I've never even considered that. Because, yeah, we don't talk enough about disabilities. We don't talk enough about, like, why don't we talk about that more in our union? But also even just in our community or in society. I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to think on that.
Well, and I think it's interesting because we live in the world now. Maybe I just don't like labels. Who cares? But like multi-hyphenates, right? We all know that not one person is just a thing. We have multiple different jobs. We have multiple different this. I am Black, I'm a man, and I'm gay. There's a then and a this and a this. So when I say BIPOC, am I just talking to like, what if there might be some issues that like I'm a Black woman, but I'm also deaf? Where do those conversations come in? You know, I don't know. And like I said, well, this is all, you know, kind of steps in the process. Ryan, go ahead, please. I'm just talking.
Well, I wonder too, like this conversation, if we dig into the Constitution a little bit and talk about what exactly the hearing committee is and how it's made up, it adds, I think, even more to this. So this is on our Constitution, if anyone wants to look at it. But these hearing committees are 5 people. 2 of them come from the regional board. The regional boards, East, West, Central, are just all the counselors from that region, except for in Central, there's some non-counselor board members. So 2 of those spots have to be from essentially our pool of counselors in that region. So it's and that's chosen by the chair of that region. So that has a lot of ability to be very intentional. The other 2 slots have to come from, and I'll literally read this. 2 of the remaining members of the hearing committee shall be members at large in good standing, selected by lot from a rotating pool of members. And then the 5th slot can either be from pool A or pool B. So it's interesting to think about this 50% number, or alongside your question, and think about how is this pool being created, and who does it? Where does the pool come from? And are we populating that pool? Because if we're talking about a pool versus we're talking about 2 out of 2 or 3 members on a 5-person committee, I think we can actually fight for a lot more neurodiversity, diversity of race, diversity of gender, diversity of inside an office city, outside an office city, stage manager, actor. So I think your question is really great because it leads us into like maybe something that's a lot more actionable in terms of this particular system.
Yeah. Either Katrina and then Sarah, it looks like.
I think Sarah had her hand up first. Go.
The only thing I'll add, even in that came up, even when you said the term BIPOC, one of my best friends is an equity member, and he is, his dad is Navajo, so he is Indigenous. And I've done a lot of unlearning and relearning just in terms of like BIPOC. I remember one time I was talking about a previous contract that I had worked on, and I was like, the BIPOC, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, were there any Indigenous people in that cast? And I was like, oh, no. And so then he actually informed me that, forgive me, I don't remember the exact number. I'm going to ask him and then come back later in the comments and post it.
Circle in that comments, yes.
But it's something like, I think the actual like Indigenous percentage of representation in our union is like less than 2% or something.
It's like 0.2%.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like even that is, you know, just to be like BIPOC, you know, so many. And I now it's like I can't turn that switch off in my head. Like anytime I see a statement by like a cast or a theater that's like our former BIPOC cast members, I'm like, did you have any Indigenous people? And I think this will come up later in episodes, but there's also resolutions in terms of accessibility even to the union. And I think, again, it's so important to have those conversations, like Ryan is saying, with reading the Constitution, because it's like, we have to be willing to sit in the fact that any system, any structure that's been built in America is rooted in white supremacy and racism, like, period. So but I think unless you start to write it in and talk about it in this way, it's not going to change. Anyway, Katrina.
Yeah, Katrina, I don't want you to forget your thought.
Oh, yeah, I'm just kind of like, yes, I'm piggybacking on people. I think ultimately we need a disciplinary board that has a diverse range of experiences, of identities, that is a true reflection and representation of our union, because ultimately, like, disciplinary board, these aren't the people you see on your Zoom screen, but ultimately they are deciding, what members are going to be fined, suspended for offenses. And one of the offenses that are being determined is conduct prejudicial to another member. Okay, well, conduct prejudicial, if you have a sea of, if everyone on the disciplinary board is a man and a woman makes a complaint because she was harassed, they might not know the depth of the experience in the same way and can't speak to how prejudicial that moment was to that woman, for instance. Or to flip the side, if someone is accused of something, is accused of conduct prejudicial, and someone can't fully grasp or has no kind of window or has privilege blinders that prevent them from acknowledging the context, which might have led to an action that need to be taken into consideration, that maybe, yes, someone nudged against the code of conduct, but if we look at what determinants were in place, and if we actually have a grasp of people's experiences, that needs to be taken in consideration too. And so when you lack that diversity, you're coming in with this assumption of like, and it gets a little bit, can become tone policing. It can be, it gets a little bit tricky and dangerous there. And when you have a system where it's based on, two of them are being appointed, and you have this kind of closed network of who is being appointed, that can get tricky with actually having inclusion and diversity in the space. And so having fundamental like quotas that, a 50% that need these numbers, as we mentioned, the specificity, it just encourages an actual sense of diversity and diverse experiences in the space.
Yeah, I love what you say right there, diverse experiences, which unfortunately you can't like put that on a printout, a resume.
Yes.
You can't like what boxes can you check with that? But I think that's really what it is. Color, a lot of race and all of that is what we see. There could be somebody who is perfectly African from South Africa. In America, you look white. So it doesn't matter where you're from. You are a white person to the naked eye. So you're going to be treated in a different way than I am, who's from Des Moines, Iowa. The whitest place you can think of, And I think now segue into our second resolution, because I really want Maria to get in here to talk about this. I think that we can, sorry, let me back up a little bit, because to Ryan's point that I had a question, we don't have to talk about it, but are the moving pieces of the committee infrastructures being overlooked? Like sometimes we like to put like a label, or like, oh, we want to make this more ByPOC, or we make this more 50%. And we're not really looking at the infrastructure of how these committees and things are being put together. And I think that in the sexual harassment training piece, we kind of talk about like, how do we get from A to B? How do we get everybody to understand this, like this language and this community and the different intricacies of it, especially harassment? Because a lot of people, myself included, you think of harassment, oh, that's a man, dog whistling at a woman. Like harassment comes in so many different forms. Which is why I'm glad that you are very, very here to talk about that. So great. It was part 2 of the discussion. Here we go. This bill, and like I said, for the length purposes, we won't read the whole thing, but one of our makers, Maria Cristina Posada, is here to speak to it, to discuss it, resolution language, and it's about, actually, Maria, let me just give you the floor, and can you talk about what this resolution is and what it intends to do?
Yes. So I would like for all of us to be on the same page when it comes to language, when it comes to, yeah, I mean, kind of what you were saying, that harassment comes in so many different forms. And there are quite a lot of people that, old white men, that don't know, that aren't really in the know of, like, because they were born a long time ago. Things are different now, I guess.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think it's important that we have mandatory sexual harassment training. And what ignited this for me was when Scott Rudin hired Amar Ramasar in West Side Story, playing a principal role last year. And yeah, I and a lot of other people were pissed, and he didn't seem to care. He went on an interview and said, yeah, I was stupid, but what am I going to do? Like, replace him? Yes. But anyways.
Yeah, you are.
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's kind of like the perfect example, because Actors Equity, when a lot of people, I'm getting off topic, but I'm going to do it.
No.
When a lot of people were tagging Actors Equity saying, like, this is crazy, how did you okay this? Their response was, we have nothing to do with the hiring process, period. They didn't have a statement. And now, yeah, everything's out about Scott Rudin. And anyways, we'll leave that. But the point is, like, you know, when the shit went down with Amar Ramasar, he was still, even when he got fired from New York City Ballet, he was still hired in Carousel on Broadway.
Mm.
Also Scott Rudin production. And okay, now I'm getting really off topic. I'm sorry, y'all.
You're on the same track. What are the common misconceptions of harassment?
Well, a lot of people think that, like, harassment has to be a really big deal for it to be harassment. But like, I'm harassed if I'm, you know, like, in my costume backstage and, like, I'm hot, so I open my robe, but, like, it's still my costume. And then, you know, if the drummer is back there and it's intermission and he says, oh, Maria, nice. You know, like,
Yeah.
what are you commenting on my breasts?
Or the sweat coming down my forehead, great.
Right, like, you may have been joking, but now I'm uncomfortable at work. And now I have to see you continuously on tour for another year.
Yeah.
And when I go and report it, they think, oh, well, he got transferred to Broadway, so it's not an issue for you anymore. And it's like these microaggressions, if you will, still affect me every day. Now I'm uncomfortable coming to work every day. Yeah. And that is a misconception. Like, even compliments, something that could be, like, meant as a compliment, can be sexual harassment. That doesn't mean don't compliment me, but just, I don't know, read the room. Yeah. But okay, so we're talking about the sexual harassment training. I want everyone to be on the same page, because a lot of us aren't. Even I wasn't. So my point is, West Side Story happened. It was a big deal. No one did anything about it. And so I started, you know, like, looking into sexual harassment training. And it turns out that New York State already has one, and it's fantastic. Like, I took it for fun, and it's 45 minutes. It's all online. You go to ny.gov, and it's kind of like in a video/quiz format. And it, first of all, defines, like, it goes into like transgender. It goes into, like, I learned that I'm a cis female. I didn't know that. I didn't know. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that now in 2021, but 2019. Like I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
Or was it 2018? Who knows?
Girl,
But,
I Googled it like 2 months ago. You and me the same. I was like, I don't know what these words mean. I don't. I'm terrible.
right.
But yeah, I don't.
And it really does go into detail of like how you identify. Yeah, it was just, so it starts into that, and it makes things really, it simplifies everything, and it kind of dumbs it down for everyone. But it's also kind of fun. Like it goes, I'm terrible with words today, but I want you to know it's great.
Yeah, no, I love
And
it.
lines up.
And I'll give you a little excerpt to kind of help you. That it says that while this theater specific, I'm trying to see. Oh, the AEA creates a free anti-sexual harassment training online based on New York State sexual harassment training. The AEA creates this comprehensive training program using the aforementioned and New York State format, information and resources, while including materials and references specifically designed for the peculiarities and intimate nature of our industry. This will include scenarios and examples geared toward theater makers. So it sounds like this is a pretty...
Oh, you're quoting me. Thank you. You're quoting me. I was like, wow, he sounds great.
Those are words. That's funny. With all this sounds good, and this is kind of to the floor. And of course, I'm here for sexual harassment. Who cares what I think? If the union is here to protect my rights while I'm working with employers, why aren't the employers doing the sexual harassment training?
Oh, because they don't give a fuck. They don't care. Does anyone else want to?
Yeah, okay.
No.
I have something to add about that, because I think this is twofold, right? Like, was Equity's response to the West Side Story situation not acceptable? Yes, because if you're going to say that you are protecting, you're protecting the worker, you're making the workspace safe, we're not just talking about standing on a 20-foot platform. We're talking about the whole gamut of safety that all of us need to show up and do our job every day. And also, like, this goes outside of the arts and entertainment industry, but like, here we are. And so, and also, like Maria is saying, it's so many gray areas, right? Like, what other industry? Hold on, I want to catch this comment. The people who need the harassment training are not people who volunteer to take it. It should be mandatory.
And baby girl, it will be. It will be.
So it's twofold, because one, you need things like this being implemented across the board by the union, because it's, I think I mentioned this yesterday too, but like, it's a cultural shift, right? And I know for me personally, I may show up one day and like perceive something as a joke, and we can joke about it. And then the next day I'm about to start my period, or I had a really triggering conversation with XYZ person and I'm not in that space mentally. And you could say the same thing to me, and I could be like, hey, not today. And I am self-aware enough that I'm going to be like, I'm going to say it nicely, maybe the first and second time, but it's like changing that culture. So we talk about these things, right? But also on the producer side, and this was something that hit me like a ton of bricks last summer. Before COVID was on the My Fair Lady tour, and graciously, when George Floyd was murdered, our production company started hosting these moderated meetings, like healing spaces, basically, with social workers. It was very, very generous. And the thing that I need producers and people hiring Actors Equity members to understand is that if you want us to show up and do our jobs to the best of our abilities, it's also in your best interest to create a safe space. Because also, when we're talking about harassment, anything like that, first of all, let me be very clear. It is literally life and death for people in this industry. It hit me like a ton of bricks that when I look at the Black men in my cast, any one of those Black men could have been George Floyd. And then what's the producer going to be? What's the producer going to do? Like, this is literally what we're talking about. And full disclosure, I come from a history of physical abuse. And so that producer doesn't know my triggers.
Right.
But I could so quickly, anyone could be so triggered, I could have a panic attack and match you up for your show. And we don't require understudies on every contract. So what happens if I'm shaking and vomiting in the bathroom and you don't have an understudy? This is in everyone's interest to mandate these things. I am like, it's literally about caring about other people. But I know that doesn't speak to everyone. Okay, fine. Then look at your pocketbooks. If that's what speaks to you, like, it is in everyone's interest to invest in this and collaborate on this. Katrina, sorry, that was
I
want to say right before Katrina gets done, I want to say one of our delegates have to go, so we're gonna give you a lovely goodbye to Mr. Ryan Morales Green. Thank you for bringing us together and being one of our faithful leaders, and I'm sure they will see you at another convention conversation. Take care. All right, Katrina, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say this training doesn't negate any training that the employer chooses to do as well. Like, it just creates a common foundation. And, Sarah was talking about this concept of solidarity, which is a word that, gets thrown around and weaponized a lot. But I think in true solidarity, we do need to have common structures and language and ways to truly support each other. And that comes from awareness, that comes from education, that comes from having bystander tools too. I think we're not only doing a disservice to survivors by not having training, we are also doing disservice to people who generally want to be allies, who want to be advocates. I was reminded last week with a not so fun incident where people didn't speak up, and and it affected me. And I realized though how it can be sometimes scary to speak up if you feel like you can't fix the problem, you don't know how to do it. But even in the lack of acknowledgement, there can be pain and harm caused. And so if we actually create systems where people can step in, where people can support, it makes the world of difference and can change actually power dynamics by having these systems in place. And a thing I love about this resolution, as well as actually the New York training program, is that with the New York, because I've actually had to do the online thing for catering. We all did the harassment training. Is that it has to be repeated. You have to take it every year. This is not a box that is checked once and you got your sticker and look, I'm an ally and I fixed sexual harassment. No, it is an ongoing process of reflection and building tools. And I think that needs to be acknowledged in the space as well. And I think it's also important to put out there that the New York State training program, it's also hella accessible. It has all of the videos, have closed captioning. It is free. There are image descriptions. You can have it in multiple languages. And so that's something which should be included in our training too. And as we look to kind of how we put this in our space, ultimately, a lot of studies have said that training, it's harder to shift philosophy, it's easier to shift behavior. And how do you do that is often through making it as specific as possible. And as mentioned in this resolution, we don't have a traditional 9-to-5 sit in a cubicle domain.
Yeah.
And there is beauty in that, but there also can be some really dangerously murky areas, and having things defined of what is acceptable, what is not, how do you report things, what is the process there, is only going to help everyone. And it also, aside from one, uplifting and supporting survivors and even creating prevention steps beforehand. I think we need to both address prevention as well as how we handling it when it happens, because these incidents are not exceptions to the rule, they are the rule. So we need to change the structure, but we also need to send clear messages to offenders that this will not stand, that we will actually address this. And in having a clear training, there's no longer the excuse of, oh, I was just making a joke when I grabbed her boob, I didn't really think much of it. No, we have actually, you went through the training. You know, we can explicitly say that you ignored the training that was part of being a member. And so what you did is conduct unbecoming to a member. And because we laid the groundwork of defining what harassment is, I think it's so important, and I love the work you've done on this.
Yeah, it's really great, and it speaks to something that you all spoken to as well, is the idea of solidarity. Let me quote this again. It says, "Be it further resolved that let's start again. Be it further resolved that AEA creates solidarity with our sister unions, in example, IATSE or the American Federation of Musicians, etc., in creating safe spaces for all artists and theater workers by upholding consistency and requiring anti-harassment training, as well as stringent tracking and discipline for offenders." By
I just want to uplift super fast. Meredith Beck put in the comments a link, and I clicked on it, and basically it's a statement from SAG-AFTRA. I just want to uplift that. Everybody go click on it and read about it.
Yes,
because it's literally
unions. Yes,
literally other unions. Anyway,
yeah, right there. And you met Meredith checking in. I'm another fan. I'm a super fan of all you delegates. I've seen her sing. We've sang on the same concert before. I didn't even know. A great gal. But yes. So why is solidarity with our sister unions important? How do we know that they have our best interest in mind, or is that a factor? Do we care?
I mean, well, my previous example of my just one day of harassment at work is the perfect example. Like me, a part of Actors Equity, I'm being harassed by a drummer who's not a part of Actors Equity. So now what? I can't, he and I don't have the same terminology. We don't have the same understanding of whatever training that I was required to take. And so it needs to be required for everyone involved in a theater space.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Late breaking news. I just clicked on that link, and I swear,
thing
breaking news. Well, I swear we did not plan this, but I just checked the date. It is April 12th, and literally today, April 12th, 2021, joint statement on the need for harassment-free workplaces in the arts. SAG-AFTRA, AEA, American Federation of Musicians, SAG-AFTRA President, Actors Equity Association President, and American Federation of Musicians Local 802 President released a joint statement. Every worker deserves to do their job in an environment free of harassment of any kind, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on and on and on. Read it because it's important. Yes. And it offers the current hotline.
Overdue.
Yes, it offers the current hotlines and resources for each of these organizations. And that's amazing because this is just the start.
Yeah, that's amazing. Can we share it in the comments? Is that the thing that Meredith?
That's the thing that Meredith.
Yeah. That's what Meredith said.
Everybody check that out, because what we're speaking is now becoming into existence, and what a great. I fully believe our resolutions are already creating impact. This is not a coincidence. I agree. You literally took the words out of my mouth and said it so much better. That's why we appreciate you. Yes.
100%.
I tell people all the time that this pandemic was a blessing and a curse, and despite where you stand religiously and all that, I think for all of us we had that big pause, and we're like, oh, I've been going a million miles a minute. Now I can sit back and not only look at my own life and everything, but how I stand in it. And how are we affecting the environments that we're in and all of that? And now as the vaccine is being lifted and we're seeing all these, there's step by step, it seems like we're getting some type of new normal. I think people are all recognizing, oh, we need to actually do something. This is the time. We were protesting, we're doing all those things, but this is the time to have tangible, actionable steps to get us over that, over to the next hump. I love that.
And I'll
I just
also add. No, go ahead, Maria. No,
Please.
I just want to throw this out before we move on, that I did not write this alone. Kedron Spencer wrote this with me. She's incredible. We had help with Kelly Faulkner and Maria Briggs. So I just want to uplift those incredible ladies, because, yeah, I could not have done this alone.
Yes. And I think, Sarah, you were saying something to continue.
Yeah, I just, to piggyback off of what you were saying, Napoleon, about this year plus now, 13, 14 months now, and having time to sit in it. And this time right now is super exciting for me, because it's like, okay, we've all been sitting for a year and thinking and talking. And so it's like, okay, now we're acting on these things. And I think, again, like, word of the day, whatever, solidarity, and what I believe it truly means is, like, especially in these conversations, taking back our power. Mm-hmm. And I say this all the time. And I also understand my privilege in saying this, and that there's so many nuances in terms of systems of structures and vulnerability and accessibility issues. But the whole Scott Rudin thing lately, and me speaking out about that on my platforms, and being met with just sort of an attitude of like, nothing's gonna happen. Like, and it's like, and I'm like, but I'm not accepting that. Yeah. Like I've not been, the universe has not given us these past 13 months
right
to go back to normal, right? Like everything has shifted. And so again, like, solidarity, it's time for us as a union and as humans to take back our power and realize that without actors and stage managers stepping up on the stage and doing what we do, nothing happens. Producers don't get paid, right? Like, and I think Katie mentioned this yesterday, like, it is scary to wield your full power of solidarity, because ultimately that means striking if you're in a union. Yeah. But it's like, but how long would it have to take for everyone to be like, no, we're not accepting that anymore? Everyone. How long?
Yeah.
Less than 24 hours? I bet. What, you know, I fear a lot of times, and I've recognized this past year especially, and in my involvement in governance, is like, a lot of times we think of ourselves as like the last people in the food chain. Yeah. And it's this mentality of, you're always replaceable. If you cause a fuss, there's someone there to replace you.
Yeah.
But I reject that. I wholeheartedly reject that. And it starts with the work that Maria and Kelly and the other Maria, and I forget the first person you said it, sorry. Like that, like, it starts with the work that's happening, these conversations that we're having. I did not sit in my apartment for 13 months to go back to whatever.
No.
That doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and to close it, and all of this is especially because we're talking, like, with Meredith coming in, I think this is a beautiful time to close this out and bring this final question to you. And I kind of asked this, like, coming from a place of, I don't know, similar experiences, like just being in, like, student senate and like the NAACP I spoke to. Like, I understand what it's like to, like, put a lot of volunteer hours into trying to create an equitable space for a bigger whole. So let me again acknowledge how thankful I am, and I'm sure many others are, for all of the work that you guys have been putting forth throughout, like, the hardest time of our lives, essentially, in so many different ways. Like, it's very admirable to me. And like I say, I like fangirl for you guys, but like, I for real do, because, like, although I might feel like I could have came in there, like, you know, and like did a lot of things. I didn't have the bandwidth for that. Like, and you guys did, because you put your name on the paper and signed up for it. So really appreciate it. Now, as we're heading to the convention, do you feel like the resolutions being brought forth on the convention floor do a great job at representing the union as a whole? Or do we think there's an ego problem in equity governance? It doesn't have to be either or. It could be one and the other. It can be both. But like, do you think, the bigger question is, do you think that all this work that we've been doing for the 13 months and sitting around all this, do they represent the 51,000, or are these just a representation of the ideas of the people putting it forth?
I like to think that for this convention, we're bringing a lot of good stuff. Like we are thinking for the 51,000.
Yeah.
But that is also coming from me, a white passing woman. So I would love to hear y'all's thoughts, who are also white passing women. But
I was just about to say,
like I am a Cuban American, but also white passing.
And I don't want to, like, and I hope I didn't frame it in a sense where do I think that like we're representing all of the right things. I don't know if, so we're in a process, like what is right and wrong, really? Like what, like, I think that's what, again, you guys are all discovering in this convention. But as an elected official, do you feel like your ideas and your words or everything are coming from and coming off of the backs of the people that you're representing? Do you feel like that you've really taken the time to, and that others too? Like, this is the first time this is all happening. It really, what I'm getting to is this delegation going to make a difference? Are we really being represented? You know?
I'm going to tell you what, we sure as hell are trying. It is all up to advisory to council.
Oh.
Because
because
I mean, like we can't if we learned anything from submitting all of our resolutions to legal, we learned that like, oh, all of this is just a suggestion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do remain hopeful, because I have to, or I'll literally just stay curled in a ball.
Yeah.
I do remain hopeful that like this is the start of things that have needed to happen for a very long time. And I think that the space that we're trying to create here with these conversations, like I hope that these extend into forever. Whoever wants to pick up the mantle, you know, like once a month, whatever it is, like checking in, hey, members from everywhere, like what's going on? What do you like? But I think if I've learned anything, that everything's a cycle, right? So like people are our members are frustrated about transparency and communication and everything else, and rightfully so. But so much of that is also about education, which is also a huge piece that's missing of what is council? Okay, council advises staff. Who's in charge of staff? The executive director. Okay, so, you know, if you observe a council meeting, how many times have I heard counselors begging staff to do something that's like, so it's this huge system of accountability. And I firmly believe any system, be it federal government, anything, any system, the people in power, usually there because of, well, always there because of white supremacy, because that built the structure. The people in power stay in power in some part or another by keeping the people below them ignorant to a certain level. Like there is something to be said for, and also without completely dismantling the system. And this is something that I've had to wrestle with as a privileged white person in this equity, working in this equity governance structure, because it's easy for me to look at someone and say, well, just hold on. we have to work within the system. We can't burn it all down. We have to just chip away within the system. But that's fine for me to say because I'm safe in the system. As I have privilege in the
the torch
system.
outside. I'm like, no, blow it up.
Right. But like it's easy for me to be like, well, just hold on. I mean, like I said again, like it's literally life and death for people. And I can be safe. Like I'm queer, yes, but if I don't feel safe, I can pass as straight. Like it's like it's navigating. But I think that this is the start. I hope that this is the start of empowering people to engage by educating them. And like literally, if you knew the questions that I have asked of people since the summer when I got elected, I mean, like when I tell you I knew nothing,
yeah.
I'm like,
actually, yeah.
I've been a deputy on a lot. Like I love to be deputy, like on a lot of the shows I'm a part of. But like everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Like one of the first shows I did, the deputy was Ife Butler, the moderator of the town hall. Like here,
love her.
Literally, fierce. And I remember sitting in it was at St. Louis Rep, and I remember sitting in our dressing room and her just like talking about the union and the importance and I was like, And then ever since then, I'm like, I'm gonna be the deputy. Again, no one knows what they're doing, trial by fire. And so like I firmly hope and believe that this is the start of talking about and educating people about the system. Like if I can sit here and be like, trust me, you can do it. I had no idea what I was doing. So I think this is the start. I think it's not easy. Like I think the bureaucracy and the system is slow.
Yeah.
Burnout is real.
Yeah.
But I like the biggest thing moving forward that's going to be crucial is accountability. These resolutions today, if they go to council and get voted on, like what's the time? Like I'm someone who operates on deadlines. So like that 50%
I'll be like, okay, so what are we doing now? I did all this work for you guys.
Exactly. So right. It's that accountability. It's that checking in. It's that like our council is democratically elected. Yeah. We have 18% voter turnout in our union elections. We can talk about that. Like
sounds like the presidential election. Oh my God. Oh my God. Katrina, final word. What do you think?
Yeah, Katrina.
Yeah, as to whether it will be representative, I think the reason partly why we're hosting these conversations is that we can make sure that our votes truly, I know I can only speak from but for me, I know anything I'm voting on, it's not my vote, it's our members' vote. I am representing a chunk of our membership. And yes, I will always, of course, vote in line with my conscience, but at the same time, weighing, who am I representing? And not trying to speak for them, but actually listen to them and bring that into the space. Right. Because so many of our structures can feel so removed from our membership. And I think it is so crucial that members have a voice, have a say in our policies, in our structures. So, and I genuinely believe there are enough people who feel in a similar way. Because ultimately for me, I don't care about politics. I'm an actor. I'm not a politician. I care about policy. Okay. Because structure shapes our entire lives. It takes our safety. It shapes how much money we earn. Like, policy is important to me. Politics isn't. I have no intention of voting in line with someone because I like them or whatever. I really don't care. I care about policy, and I care about how policy is going to affect members. And so I know, as a cis white woman based in New York City and an actor, I can't speak to personally representing, but I can do my best to have outreach and make sure that I am including as many voices. And I would say, in reading out loud all of the resolutions, I was really grateful for the members who emailed me and literally would go through every resolution of the day and say, I was in favor of this because of X, and I didn't like this because of Y. And I will say outright, it changed my opinion on resolutions. There were certain things that, based on my blinders of experience, I was like, oh, no brainer, this one's an awesome resolution. And then someone would say, oh, that specific phrase actually would harm me, and is there a way to negotiate? And then I could talk to the motion maker. So I think we do definitely, a lot of it comes down to communication and education along the way. And I think the joys of spaces like this is if we actually have conversations about these resolutions, one, we can make choices that are more representative of our body. It also has a cause and effects, as we've talked about before, these resolutions are advisory to council. And so in accountability there, well, if I as a member know this resolution went to the convention and I know it was voted in favor of, that puts a little bit of a fire under council to actually do something about it. Right. And I think members have more power in making sure these things are followed through on. Because, and I was grateful that both of the resolutions today have very specific timeframes they needed to be acted on. So that does have built-in accountability. Now, some resolutions were told not to do that because then they'll just be voted down, which is an issue, which is separate. But I think we actually have power to hold our representatives accountable and make sure that this space is truly, when we first heard about the convention, it was advertised as a way to bring more voices into the space. Right. And I think we need to all do our parts to kind of hold our union, which we are all a part of, that we all shape and create, accountable to that. So if you have if you've been listening to resolutions that you're concerned by, or you have questions by, or you really support, please reach out to us. All of our emails are on on the equity portal under governance. In the same way, the number of times I called my representatives during the Trump administration to be like, no, this is screwed up and this is why you need to stand up. We engage in that way in politics, and we don't necessarily with our governance and act as equity. And I will always say, please email me. We will have a Zoom. We will whatever. We might not agree, but I will definitely listen and try to do my part. And I think a lot of people feel the same way.
Isn't that interesting? People will go to bat, literally put their lives on the line for a national election, for a president that's probably going to make a lot of decisions that probably might not affect your day-to-day. But let it be your own union or your boss or somebody who harassed you or anything like that. Yeah. Silence. That's, I guess, is some food for thought as we exit. Thank you, my three ladies, and to Ryan, who was with us for a second, for a while, and had to leave. To Ruth, to everybody with the Transparency Coalition. This is awesome. Thanks for having me again. Thanks for coming on to talk about your resolution and things.
I will just also add, Katrina said all of our emails are on the portal. If the portal scares you, you can DM me personally, and I will provide you the exact hyperlink for the exact page.
Slide into those DMs.
Because the portal also scares me as well. And anxiety is a real thing.
It's crazy. It scares me. So the last thing we do is try to navigate the portal. Also, make sure you tune in tomorrow for Tuesday, April 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern District time. What's EDT? Daylight time, right? Thank you. And 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time for an episode discussing a resolution arguing that AEA should organize cruise ship work. Hey, it gets more interesting. I think that's it. So everybody have a good day.
Thank you.